Shalom and good day all, this is Healing29 back again for another DC comic review. And in this DC comic review, as you can see here, I've got two annuals and last but not least, the Fear State Omega. So I'll be reviewing this one first and then be going into the Batman Fear State and finishing off with the Mariko Tamaki, the one that preludes us into the shadows of the Bat. I'll just get things prepared and it'll be ready. So jumping into the first annual that I'll be reviewing in this, and that is the Batman 2021 annual by James Tynion, or the Tiny Onion, as he likes to be known through his website. And looking at these covers, do these covers in any way, shape or form connect to something that happens inside of the story? Sure enough they do, and for the first cover I actually decided to give it a 7.5 out of 10. And I gave the second cover, the variant, a 7 out of 10. Now I'm going to move into the internal art, which we'll get to see some of the beginning, middle and end of story. And one good thing about this, I'm really happy that there's no bloody backstories. We need a break from them. So let's get started. So here we go with some of the art around the beginning of the story, and this is actually set in the past. And the character that we see here is a young ghost maker, to which we also learn that his name, or his real name, or is Minahal Khan, who later becomes Ghostmaker. And you can see how the gangsters play a part in his family's life. As we jump to the middle of the story, as it takes place more so in the future now. And we've got a character here which we see in front of us by the name of Gator. And last but not least, some of the art towards the end. With the art in this, there were some nice panels in it, but there were also some areas too which I wasn't too fond of the art. But it was nice to get to see a lot of the background behind the character in this particular issue, linking to Ghostmaker. To which I gave the art a 6.5 out of 10. I'm now going to move in the area of the story rating, to which I'll be covering references, if there were references, time, location, and last but not least, cast of characters. So starting off with the first one, did we get any comic references? No, we didn't, but did it affect the story rating? Not at all. Moving into the time, this is how the time fluctuated within the story. We started off with many years ago, then it moved to now, or the present, within the story. Then it ended up going back to 1 year ago, and then reflecting back to many years ago, which is actually seen at the beginning of the story once again. The location to which this took place is in Singapore, in a Khan export company. We also had Gotham City, along with the Devil Skull Island, and last but not least, we end up returning to the country of Singapore, to where the beginning of the story started, but also ended. Moving into the next thing, we had the cast of characters being Khan, or the young Khan, being Ghostmaker himself. We end up meeting Firefly, or end up seeing Firefly, a character by the name of Icon, another one by the name of Brainstorm, and last but not least, Instigator. For this, I gave the story a 7 out of 10. Thank you, James Tinian. I did actually enjoy this more so than the next one that I'll be putting up for the review. So now it's finally time to jump into Fierce State Omega by James Tinian. So starting off with the cover, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that's happening inside of the story? Half yes, half no, to which I gave the art a 6.5 out, to which I gave the cover a 6.5 out of 10. As much as I like what we see here, it would have actually been nice to see at least even Damien make an appearance. But until then, it's time to move into the next thing, the internal art, which we'll get to see some of the art around the beginning, middle, and of course the end. Now this is some of the art around the beginning, and this has to do with the moving of Crane, starting the head into Arkham. This is some of the art around the middle. And as you can see here, we've got the character of Peacemaker, or Peacekeeper, not Peacemaker. One beginning to make his escape out of where he is. And last but not least, we have Batman having a bit of a discussion with Crane. For the internal art, I also decided to give it a 6.5. Now, jumping into the story rating, which consists of were there any comic references, was time addressed in the story, locations, and last but not least, cast of characters. So, moving into the first one, were there any comic references? Not at all. Did it affect the story rating? Yes, it did. Moving into the next thing, time. Was time addressed in the story? Not really. Did it affect the story rating? Yes, it did. And you'll find out when we get to it. Now, moving into the next thing, location. Now, the location wasn't very clear, or the locations weren't super clear or pointed out in the story, but you could see where they were, all save for maybe one or two places that were pointed out, or actually mainly one place that was pointed out. So starting off with Gotham, or this is taking place in Gotham, the next place it sort of took its turn, it was in the Batmobile with Batman's discussion with Crane. We end up returning to Eden, which links to some of the characters which I'll be addressing in the cast. And last but not least, Arkham Tower. The cast of characters consisting of Renee Montoya, who is now a commissioner, Scarecrow, who is also Crane, Batman, Miracle Molly, Simon Saint, to which there was some work done between him and Amanda Keller, Peacekeeper 1, we of course had Catwoman, Ivy, Harley, Ghostmaker, Clown Hunter, and one other character, Gardner, that also made their appearance. Did everything here also, did a lot of things here also affect the story? In some essence it did, and to which the story also got the same rating as the cover and the art, being 6.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move on to the Batman Detective Comics annual. So now we finally make our start into the last comic that will be reviewed in this video, being the Mariko Tamaki Detective Comics Batman Annual. And starting off with first things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that happens inside of a story? Sure enough, it bloody does, and it scores a 7.5 out of 10. I will now show you some art inside of the story, consisting around the beginning, middle and end, and I'll get to cover any of the characters that we get to see, as well as any other things that are seen in the story. So as we jump into the beginning of the story, in the artwork, this takes place in the past. And of course, in this, we've got the character of Bruce, along with his parents, and this is before all the horrendous events happen to him in his life. But he also gets to see what his old man does. And I really like what happened there in this part, like what happened in the story. But, of course, this is covering the area of the art, and I do enjoy the artwork at the beginning. I'll now jump to the middle. As we jump to the middle of the story, we have a new person making an appearance. But are they the villain? That's the question. Or are we... And of course we got a connection to Bruce's past. And as you can see, because he's not paying attention, he nearly gets hit by a vehicle, only to be saved by his old man. Really nicely done, and definitely enjoyed it in the story. And last but not least, some of the art towards the end of the story. As you can see, we've got Nightwing catching up with some of the people at the facility. Alright, for this I gave the internal art a 7 out of 10 as I really enjoyed it along with the story. So now it's time to... I enjoyed how it worked with the story. So moving into the story itself, as you already know, there are things that I personally enjoy in my stories in how I rate them, including comic references, time and location, as well as the cast of characters. Moving into the first things first, were there any comic references in regards to this? Not at all, but did it affect the story rating? Not all that much. So moving into the next thing, we also had the order of how things went time-wise in the story. Moving in with the first one was many years ago, which was followed through by that night. So connecting to the first event that we see in the story, we also get moved into the present day, and we also have the repetition of that night back again. But no real indication as to what time through that night, but I'm not too worried about it, and it didn't affect the story rating that much. Moving into the locations, we had downtown Gotham City. We also ended up going to Fox Tech and also into Chinatown in Gotham, which was really nice to see. Moving into the cast of characters, of course we had a young Bruce Wayne with Thomas and as well as Martha Wayne. We also end up meeting Lucius Fox, a character by the name of Faust, who will definitely be making their appearance back again within this series. That is a big definite that you can get with this. We also have Nightwing, a character by the name of Wacky Pete, who might in turn be returning, as well as someone by the name of Chase. Overall, I gave this story a rating of 7 out of 10. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.